The views expressed are not those of local community broadcasting, WYML LP, or its management, volunteers, or underwriters. Greetings and welcome back to the Personal Safety Show. This is Marcus Melnick, your host with Firearm Mentor and Stress to Logic. And if you've been listening to the first half of the show, we've been talking about carjacking and what to do. The first half of the show covered what you can do without a firearm, but a question came in from a listener on what to do when you do have a firearm. And if you look at the NRA website, they have got story after story about carjackings being thwarted by concealed carry holders, which is great. Carjacking is a form of robbery, and you're being robbed of your car. There's a difference between robbery and burglary. Burglary is basically someone breaks into your house when you're not home. Robbery is quick and violent. So how do we take quick and violent out of the mix? Well, window glass is not as sturdy as windshield glass, and a window can be busted out. Take some time. The vehicle itself may be the best defensive tool at your disposal. The first thought may be to stomp on the gas and drive off, but if you've thought about making an escape by putting the car in reverse, how about driving on the sidewalk? Any quick defensive maneuver should make every effort to avoid hurting anyone, including the offender. But if the offender gets hurt, it's like Drago in one of the Rocky movies. If he dies, or something like that. If somebody legally carries a defensive firearm in your car, you need to give some thought about how you carry it. And that's one of the questions that was proposed to me. When the question came in, the listener was asking, what about a dashboard holster versus a concealed carry holster? Now, I'll tell you that, particularly if you are right-handed, getting out a firearm on your right hip when you are the driver and seatbelted is very, very difficult. What do I tell people to do? Well, have your gun in your center console. And we talked about the different color codes of mental awareness in segment 1. You have to be in condition yellow. Your gun should be in your hand before you need it, not after a knife is at your throat, a gun is at your face. By looking at your surrounding communities or surrounding area, you will be able to see who's walking towards you. Do they look like a thug? Are they masked? And I don't mean like a surgical mask, like for COVID. I mean ski mask. I mean, is their hoodie all the way up? So you're going to have to look around. Number 1, be aware. Number 2, figure out what your best deployment is. There are other ways to carry on your person: cross draw, shoulder holsters, even ankle holsters. I don't like ankle holsters to begin with. But it would be a good idea to practice with one hand because your other hand will be busy with the steering wheel. Also, practice shooting at odd angles because the armed attacker might be shooting at you from positions other than your driver's side window. So how do you do that at the range? Well, you bring a couple boxes or you ask them, do you guys have any empty boxes? And I guarantee you a range is always getting in ammunition, firearms, cleaning supplies. They've got boxes upon boxes upon boxes. So you put the box on the bench and you shoot around it, or you cut a hole in it and you shoot through it as if it is a window. As always, you want to stay alert. If you can see it coming, you have a far better chance of avoiding the trap. If you wait till you get pinned between two cars, you waited too late. Carjackers can be defeated. There's different ways to carry a firearm. And the different ways have to do with comfort, security, and accessibility. So comfort is first, because if it's not comfortable carrying your gun, the gun that's in your safe is not going to help you with the confrontation on the street. If it's comfortable, it'll increase the chances that you will have your firearm. Security, while important, is a little bit negotiable. You can get holstered with straps, snaps, retention devices, but keep in mind this is a concealed carry holster, meaning if nobody knows you have it, they're not going to try to get for it. And accessibility is the final element in this triad. It just refers to the ability to get your gun in your hand and bring it on target. And ideally, you want to do this quickly and easily. The less accessible your gun is, the longer it takes to deploy it. And that means it's hidden pretty well. Only you will know the acceptable balance, and there's pros and cons. There's also something called off-body carry. And that's when you have the firearm in a container like a purse, a fanny pack, and fanny pack is certainly okay in the car, although some people think it's not fashionable. Who's going to see it? Your firearm could be in a purse. Downside is if it is in the purse or it is in a bag that you're carrying, a purse snatcher can grab the firearm. So you want to make sure your firearm is held securely in whatever bag you're doing. Don't just get a regular tote bag and throw it in. Keep control of your bag and practice accessing your gun from your off-body system after it is unloaded. Then you double check, then you triple check, and you practice drawing the gun as well as reholstering it, paying attention to finger discipline and muzzle direction. So occasionally I'll have a student who just can't avoid putting their finger on the trigger, no matter how many times I tell them, finger straight, finger off the trigger. They still do it. So I 3D printed it. It's kind of like 2 times the thickness and 2 times the width of a popsicle stick. And I glued on some Velcro so that you can stick your finger through it. It will remain straight, and then you can turn it around and your finger will bend, reaching the trigger. So this is going to be a tool that I'm deploying in my classes for those who just can't get out of that habit. And it's a habit. So the same safety rules are going to apply. And, some people want to carry in the center console. Some people want to carry in the glove box. Either way, you have to have a holster. Whether it's a TGH or a trigger guard holster from Black Rhino Concealment, that trigger has to be covered. I'd hate to have a striker-fired firearm racked and ready to rock and roll in a glove box, and all of a sudden the pen or the lipstick or the chapstick or another object gets into that trigger, and all of a sudden you hit a bump and bang, the gun discharges. You need to have that trigger covered. And thefts of guns from cars is an ongoing problem. There's a significant number of guns sold illegally that were originally stolen from vehicles, including police cars. And in too many places, gun owners didn't try to take the steps to protect their firearms by locking their cars. Lock your car. There's also a few options to store your gun safely and legally in your car should you need to. One of the most common places to carry a gun in a car is the glove box. It's basically easily accessible in case of emergencies, but should be locked for security. While it might seem like storing your concealed carry weapon in the glove box is the safest way to transport your firearm, it does have risks. Passengers can easily access it. So if you don't trust someone who rides in your car, don't leave it in the glove box. Size and shape of the firearm should also be taken into consideration before choosing the option as well. If your gun is too big for the glove box, it might not fit properly or it might be difficult to access in an emergency. And again, if your car is broken into, the burglar can steal your concealed gun and use it to commit a crime, or sell it and it'll be used to commit a crime by another criminal. First place they search is the glove box or center console. That's where most valuables are stored. By not responsibly securing the gun, you may be inadvertently contributing to a crime, although there's nothing illegal about leaving a gun in a glove box. If you get pulled over and reach for your registration, don't be like me, where a black cloud follows me around. Now, I don't really do this. I say this to be funny, but don't have your gun in the same place as your paperwork, because if you have luck like me, the police officer is going to ask for your proof of insurance, your registration, whatever they ask for. You're going to reach over to your glove box, and then you're going to open your glove box, and your gun is going to fall out. So your gun is going to fall out, and then you've escalated the situation unnecessarily. Because traffic stops are one of the most dangerous duties that police officers perform, and they have every reason to be on edge because they don't know who you are. You may be a great person, but they don't know. Console is another. There's sometimes the navigation system moves away, and there's a little cubby hole, you can put it there. You can also have it locked under your seat. There's a ton of gun safes. Gun bunker is one of them for vehicles where you can put it in the car. But at the same time, you have to be able to access it quickly. So location, location, location is where you want to make considerations when you are carrying in the car. So navigating seatbelts. Well, if you are carrying and you're right-handed and your seatbelt is on, you may have to get the seatbelt off before you deploy the firearm. And when we talk about deploying and reholstering, when you deploy your firearm, whether you're in a vehicle, whether you're on the street, whether you're walking around, your eyes need to be on the threat. Because the minute you look down to move your clothing out of the way or figure out where your gun is, this should all be done tactilely, meaning by feel. You look at the bad guy, you take your gun out, you make sudden movements with it, which is intimidating in and of itself. Then when you reholster, that's when you look at the holster. The situation is safe, there's no bad guy, or the bad guy is down. Then you look at your holster, you keep it pointed at the bad guy until the last second, then you point the muzzle down and reholster. So with seatbelts, you may have to take it off. You may have to take it off. There is also navigating the steering wheel. Practice shooting one-handed because might be driving with the other hand. And also you want to take a class, and Thomas Krall from Alpha Concepts has this, where you're actually shooting while you're moving. It's not easy. It is definitely not easy. And it's probably not a good idea to shoot and drive at the same time unless absolutely possible, just because both activities are extremely, extremely distracting. So let's talk about brandishing your gun. Now, I have a couple students, actually, who have been in road rage incidents and have brandished their gun, one of whom got arrested, even though he was the victim. So the Second Amendment does grant individuals the right to bear arms, but there's a great responsibility. So we need to know what brandishing means. And brandishing, we all know what it means. It means you show someone the butt of your gun to get them to cooperate. So brandishing refers to the act of displaying the weapon in an angry or threatening manner. Its definition does not always have to be explicit in state law. So my brother-in-law is a cop. If he was going to show me his new gun, that's not brandishing because I know he's showing me his gun. It is not a tense situation. But if somebody comes up to you and is pointing the gun at you, that's a tense situation. So brandishing, the one student I had, I think he was charged with brandishing maybe aggravated assault. Some states it is a felony, which means substantial fines, potential imprisonment, and there's images of violence. So there's misconceptions that are shared with law enforcement by people. Oh my God, it's a gun. So in defending against carjackings, your SUV is an extension of who and what you are. That's not a legal statement. It is usually a place of safety, and you probably tend to think of it that way. However, the rise have taken heightened situational awareness of potential threats. So prior to new key technology, cars could be hotwired when you weren't around. It was safer for them to do it. It was safer for them to hotwire your car. Then the automakers started putting in coded chips in vehicle keys. Even if a vehicle was hotwired, it could not be driven. The computer would not allow the vehicle to move without the chip in place. It was almost enough to put the thieves out of business. But since they could not steal a car without the chip key, the next solution was to steal the key. To do that, the thief has to interact with the victim. And we don't want to be the victim, but that's the role that we would play, because I'm hoping, and this is supposed to be funny, that my listeners aren't carjackers, that they would be on the victim side. So since a thief couldn't steal a car without a chipped key, basically they have to interact with the person. And there's a few steps that you can take to improve your personal safety and security of your vehicle. First of all, do not be an easy target. Criminals don't want a fight. They want people that are vulnerable. For the kinds of people who attempt this type of criminality, physically engaging strong people who might fight back is just too much work. Did you know bad guys are lazy? They want to take the easy way out. Distraction is also a common theme, so you need to be aware of your surroundings. someone's engaging you, you still need to look around because they may have an accomplice. A couple of human behavior experts conducted a study in 1981 to find out how criminals choose victims. They selected a group of criminals and individuals out of a large group of people that they would choose to target. In order to get a random sample, the researchers made a video of 60 New Yorkers walking down the busy sidewalk between 10 and noon, so morning time. The experts then showed the video to these prison inmates who've been convicted of assaultive crimes. They asked them to rate the pedestrians on the basis of who they believe would make good victims. The researchers assumed that those victims would be easily identified by category: age, race, sex, clothing, or other observable phenomena, but the results were very surprising. At first, the researchers couldn't discern a common theme, except for the fact that independent criminals viewing the videos all picked the same ones. Then the criminals were asked, why did you choose these people? And the inmates said that some people just looked like easy targets. On that basis, the researchers concluded that much of the victim selection process is unconscious. Researchers also explained that people who gave off an organized experience and did not stick out from the crowd were most likely to avoid being targeted as victims. People who stood out by virtue of their clothing, appearance, or difference in gait were often selected as victims. Victim selection revolves around subtle signals that a person gives off. Anyone who's perceived as weak is targeted because criminals want compliance. And that means someone who's going to be surprised when the door gets flung open and a gun is stuck in their face. Knowing what kind of vehicles to avoid owning is nearly as important as what to do if you're attacked. If we think of carjackers as individuals without transportation who simply need a car, but this is not the case. Most of the time, carjackers use their own vehicle and operate in teams. And when they head out on the hunt, they may be looking for specific types and colors of vehicles that the local chop shops are requesting. Brands are also a matter. The National Insurance Crime Bureau reported in 2021 the top 5 vehicles stolen were full-size Chevy pickups, full-size Ford pickups, Honda Civics, Honda Accords, and Toyota Camrys. The casual car thief counts on a vehicle being unattended. The carjacker gains access through the driver, instead of trying to find an unoccupied vehicle. So that's what happens. There's a ton of schemes. We talked about them, bump and run. We talked about distraction. Hey, you got any spare change? ATM is another source of distraction for the driver. You're in condition white if you're at an ATM. You need to look around because there's not only the bonus of a car, there's bonus of fresh cash. Shoppers who are carrying packages are easy targets. People are often friendly and try to be helpful, but these people that are trying to be helpful may be criminals. It's also important to park in a lighted area. And there's a whole thing about the shell game. Someone may ask for directions, hoping you'll point and show your hands, or ask you what time it is, which requires you to use your dominant hand to uncover your watch on your non-dominant wrist. You are now looking at your watch back in condition white. So over and over and over again, you hear me saying, be in condition yellow. What's a swarm attack? Well, in the early 1990s, there was something called a knockout game. And this game involved groups of young people, it still happens today, targeting unsuspecting pedestrians, aiming to knock them out with a single punch to the head. Sometimes it's from behind. A left or right hook to the temple is more devastating than a punch to the nose. These have evolved into more brutal attacks. It's very possible you could be swarmed in a carjacking, and it's basically like killer bees, where tons of bees will come and attack, and it's overwhelming to the victims. Most of the time, these victims are in their 50s to their 80s. I just entered my 50s. So one example occurred in December of 2023 at Kroger's in Columbus, Ohio. 53-year-old father of 3 encountered 3 teens in the store that led to a verbal altercation. Security said the teens had to leave the building, and unbeknownst to this 53-year-old, they were waiting in the parking lot, and they ambushed him, mercilessly beating and kicking him while he was down. Witnesses recounted the attackers were laughing the whole time they were beating him, and he died 2 days later. So situational awareness, preparedness, knowing how a threat assessment are all parts of this. And I always tell people, Have your gun in your hand before you need it. According to an article I just read on the USCCA, and it's an opinion piece, the best option for close-range self-defense is a 5 or 6 shot centerfire revolver, ideally with a bobbed or concealed hammer, in 32 H&R Magnum, 327 Magnum, 38 Special 9mm, 357 or 44 Special, and they're also recommending laser grips. Now, I don't necessarily agree with that. Yes, these bobbed hammer guns you can shoot through a purse, through a coat. I mean, deploy it through a purse. I don't mean get shot through a purse. So they're simple, they're reliable, but at the same time, if you're getting swarmed, I would recommend getting a semi-automatic, at least a 380, possibly a 9mm, but at the same time, you have to be able to deploy it. And there are skills that you can use. You can set up 3 silhouette targets at 10 feet and closer, one-handed shooting, non-shooting hand protecting the side of your head in a boxing position with a closed fist, and put 1 round in each of the targets. Follow up with 2 additional rounds placed on any of the 2 targets to finish the course. Include contact and near contact shots. Now, don't be like the I just effing shot myself guy. You still have to be careful. Your finger still has to be out of the trigger, off of the trigger when you're doing these drills. And if we're talking about this, we should probably talk about use of force. There's different levels of use of force. Being there is a use of force. Presenting your firearm is use of force. Pointing your firearm is another level of use of force. And actually firing your firearm is probably the ultimate use of force. There's just different levels, you can use verbal commands. You should always use verbal commands. And what I do is I recommend, and depends on the level or the angst in the situation, but I've always done ask, advise, order. I'm going to ask you, walk away. I'm advising you, you need to walk away. I'm ordering you to walk away, or you can just say it in a commanding voice. Walk away now. Another good thing to say is in a very stern voice. Do it now. Walk away. Do it now. And I used to use that with my children when they had to brush their teeth. Oh, hey, go brush your teeth. I don't want to. Do it now. And then, wow, they complied. As they got to be teenagers, it didn't work. So just be using verbal, stop, help. And you want to do it with a deep timbre and a sense of urgency, not, may you please stop helping, or may you please stop assaulting me. No, it's get off me, get back. And if you use short phrases, it's better, because you are in an adrenaline dump, they are in an adrenaline dump, and they become a little bit neurodivergent, meaning they've got auditory blockers. You may not be able to get through with them. You can also do empty hand control, bodily force. There's less lethal weapons like pepper spray, stun guns, tasers, the Byrna kinetic projectiles, and then there's lethal force. So these are all different levels that you can deploy, that you can use. Some of the other questions that were asked were how to present yourself and your weapon. Well, you do it as fast as possible, and there's 3 safe directions when you're handling a firearm. The 3 safe directions are down, downrange, and at the bad guy who's attacking you. So why do I say that? A, it's funny. Okay, it's a little bit funny. It's cute. But the reality is, once again, we are conditioned to not drive on the sidewalk. We're conditioned to not pull the fire alarm. And we're also conditioned to not point a gun at anything we're not willing to destroy. If someone's attacking you with enough force to cause death or great bodily harm, then you may be justified in deploying your firearm. If you have a passenger in the car and you like them, your duty is to protect them. Not a legal duty, but a right thing to do duty. If you have a baby carrier in the backseat, we actually address this. If you can get that baby out, get that baby out. And the big question is, do you need to call the police if you deploy your firearm and shots are not fired? I would say in the suburbs, if you have to deploy your firearm, yes, it's a good idea to call the police. If you're in a rough area, you're in Englewood, you're in Austin, or there's no one around, you have to call the police? I don't know. That's an individual decision. Now, if the person left and you've never seen them before and you're never going there again, what are you going to do? Waste your time, make a police report, make a description of the person who's never going to be caught? You have to be comfortable with that situation. Once again, if I were to sum up the best things that you can do to avoid carjacking is, these are tips. Number 1, have the gun in your hand before you need it if you choose to carry concealed. Number 2, do not stop the vehicle. If you're at a stoplight, have enough room so that you can inch up to the red light. And even if you can't have enough room to inch up, still leave yourself an out. Don't be afraid to drive on the sidewalk. Don't be afraid to sideswipe another car. That's going to bring attention. That's going to bring attention. That's going to bring the police to you. That may even bring paramedics to you. Be aware of your surroundings. Head on a swivel, condition yellow, drive defensively, look around, continually be aware of your surroundings. And if you are uncomfortable, call 911. Thank you very much for taking the time. Hopefully this information will make you feel more comfortable. Hopefully you'll never need it. But if you do, you can always come back to the YouTube page and listen to the broadcast. Thank you very much, and I'll talk to you guys next week. Stay safe.
We have monthly concealed carry license CCL classes in the northwest suburbs of Chicago. Dates can be seen at firearmmentor.com/classes. If you have a question, we can be reached at www.firearmmentorcard.com. That is our electronic business card, has all of our contact information and links in it. It's the easiest way to get a hold of us. Until next time, stay safe out there, and I'll see you at the shooting range. This is Marcus Melnick from Firearm Mentor signing off. The views expressed are not those of local community broadcasting, WYML LP, or its management, volunteers, or underwriters.